3, 2, 1. Let's go.
Okay. Hi, everybody. This is Jim Conda Jr., founder of NetworkAmerica.org. And I usually begin, this is the new person call in the first few minutes. And then we have a special guest, then discussion and questions or comments or whatever. I usually like to say, why are we doing this? If you're a new person, is this really worth your time? Is this different than anything else you can do as far as action goes? And the answer is yes. This is different and unique in what can be done to put the country back on the right course, take back the country. Probably 100 million people are mad at what happened in the last election and all the news coverage and lack of news coverage. They want to do something, but they don't know what to do. This call is where you find out what to do, okay? And Dan Schultz, who's on the call, as Q said, we met on this call 13 years ago, and he kept trying to get on somebody's show that would get somebody to, he was trying to get them to announce it, you know, like Sarah Palin or Glenn Beck back in 2007-8. Finally, a few months ago, he broke through, and who had kind of become his friend Steve Bannon of the War Room put him on, and that began the rush to people understanding this, at least the concept. But I know people are still wondering, is this really yes, this is really the thing. Now, the reason we do Precinct is if you write a letter, if you got the energy to do that, good. If you visit your congressman, if you go to a rally, which I like to do, and Trump or Buchanan in the 90s, Ron Paul, some of these type people, especially the Trump rallies, great fun. We scream and we go home. And then they keep doing what they're doing, okay? In writing letters and visiting them, we're kind of, and I blame, again, I say every call, our leaders, the groups I like, NRA, Right to Life, Ron Paul movement, you know, the Patriot, the Tea Party in general, they've hit this issue of precinct strategy, but they haven't done it in a vigorous enough way, sometimes not even in a proper way, okay? So our leaders have kind of treated us over the last 40 years like these people in Congress, these people running the Republican Party, they're like superior beings to you, and all we can do is go and please do something for us, please stand up for the Constitution. We're begging these superior beings to do something for us, and they're not worried about that, and they're often responding to pressures and money and power and advantages they'll get for following the rhinos who are running most of the country and most of the Republican Party, okay? So this is where you become the party, where you become the Congress. Some of us become the party leaders of the Congress. This is the only way to do this peacefully and constitutionally. Abraham Lincoln referred to it in 1860. He said, get our precinct people out to walk the neighborhoods. But the reason we're doing this, before I tell you how it works, the reason we're doing it is because this is how we become the party leaders. We're going to talk about the Republican Party in this call. This is how but the same works for the Democrats. And the Democrats and Republicans control every last county, every state, all of the federal government. So they want us to go out. I like the Constitution Party. Somebody else likes the Libertarian Party. They want us to go out in meetings out there, out of their way, and have meetings that make us feel good. But that's not where the power is. The power is taking the party leadership into the hands of people who are conscience over party and pro-Constitution, okay? So it's the precinct strategy only. The neighborhood precinct committeeman strategy, as it's called in many places, or sometimes places different names. That strategy is the only way to become the party, to become the Congress. Now, and then we can take back the destiny of the country. And this could all happen very quickly. If we're trying to get Dan Schultz in front of Donald Trump, and Trump, if he started mentioning this and mentioning it in his speeches, putting up an 800 number, saying, call me, and we'll tell you how to run in your neighborhood precinct, and we'll take back the Republican Party. And, with overwhelming constitutionalists and people that want the Second Amendment and the Bill of Rights and many of these rhinos will tell you they want that in private, but they're tied into the system and they're still putting party over principle. We can't have that if we want to turn the country around. So that is why. This is how we save the country, by changing the Congress and changing the party leaders. Now, how does it work? In 1972, I was an alternate delegate to the Nixon convention, and I feel like a moron because for 14 years, from 1972 when I was 19 till 1986 when I was 33, I never thought about it. I just thought, well, I guess the Republican Party leaders, rich people pick them. I just never thought about it. And then somebody in 1986 taught us all. He had gone to the Pat Robertson Christian Coalition thing. Robertson was about to run for president, so Robertson was teaching his people how this worked because he wanted to take over the Republican Party. So he came and explained to us that the party leaders in your county, we're talking about a county now. I live in Hamilton County in Ohio. You live in a county. Hamilton County, for instance, here and where you are, the precinct people elect the party leaders. So we call the precinct office the most powerful office in the land when you understand it. So there's one country we're talking about, USA, 50 states. There's 3,141 counties. Most people don't know that, but they do know what county they live in. And that county is divided into little geographical areas, about 10 or 15 streets around your house in the city. And these boundaries for your little neighborhood precinct are just as they're just as well defined as the state and the county. So you might live in a neighborhood precinct. It's your voting precinct, not your police precinct. By the way, there's a 1 in 100 chance I'm going to get disconnected now. If I do, Hugh, I'll be back with you on the computer in 2 minutes. But so anyway, so these little neighborhood precincts, it's so exact that if you like got a main street where you are, if you got a main street, then you might find that 2242 Main Street is in your neighborhood precinct, and 2246, one house over, is in the next guy's. But these are very well defined, very, very well defined areas. Okay, so we all live in a neighborhood precinct, and it's where you, it's where you and all of your people in your neighborhood go to vote. And I vote at the White Oak Senior Center, and you vote somewhere. And that all the people in your precinct, when they show up in person, go to that place to vote. So these little neighborhood precincts, this is where we're losing the country because we don't even know we're in a precinct. And so, for instance, when in Ohio, and I can only use one state at a time as an example, but in Ohio, every May, every 2 years in May, 2022 is the next one, next May. They have when you go to vote for primary in the Republican Party, and maybe you vote for the congressman, maybe you vote for the governor. There's people trying to win the Republican primary for governor. Well, at the very end, there's a place nobody noticed for committeeman, and most people don't even notice it. I didn't for 14 years. And the committeeman, if there's nobody running, which there often isn't, 1/3 of these all-important places are vacant. These all-important offices are vacant, 1/3, maybe more. And so if you're running and you're running alone, then you just vote for yourself and you win. And if you got competition, then whoever gets the most votes, everybody in your street and your neighborhood votes for who they want to be precinct executive. They may not even know what it is. Okay, so we're losing first the country because we're not even on the ballot for precinct. Okay, now let's go further and talk about let's go further and talk about how you get on the ballot for precinct. Different in each state. In Ohio, you get 5 signatures. You can get for $2 or online. You can get a list that tells you everybody that lives in your precinct. Sometimes it's online or you got to buy it. Okay, for $2. And then you know who are the Republicans, Democrats, Independents, who's not registered to vote. And very simply, you get 5 signatures. And in Ohio, if you're running Republican, you can get Republican signatures or independents, or you can register people. But you get on the ballot with 5 ballot signatures. There could be 1 person on the ballot or 50 people on the ballot. If 50 people got 5 signatures to run for precinct executive or precinct committeeman, which never happens. There's never more than 2 or 3 ever. Usually there's one or none. So we get on the ballot, and then, okay, so that's the thing. You're on the ballot in May, and let's say you win. Here is where we're really losing the country, because nobody knows about this. By state law in Ohio, and it's the same in every state, something happens. By state law in Ohio, then there's a meeting 1 month later in June of next year. The state law says the Republicans and Democrats must hold a meeting so that all the precinct executives that were elected at the May primary can vote on who the party leader is. And as I say, this is where we're losing the country. What for some reason none of our leaders will tell us about to speak of. Steve Bannon thankfully let us have a breakthrough when he had Dan on there. But so the point is, you go to this meeting. It's like a convention center, or if you're in a small county, then maybe maybe you would go to a school, gym or something. So you go here, and then all the elected precinct executives elect the party leaders, the head. So we would elect the head of the Hamilton County Republican Party leader in Hamilton County, Ohio. Okay. So once you do that, that leader of the county usually acts as kind of a dictator for the next 2 years. And I don't mean that as a criticism. Most people don't want to be involved. We need to be involved. That's the main thing we need. But people just generally leave it. And him and his team, his executive committee, endorses the candidates. And so here's again why we're running. Why? And 95% of the endorsed candidates win in the last 100 years, because the party usually has enough manpower to have somebody there at each precinct passing out a little, voter's guide, and people, it's election day, I don't know who's running. They take the Republican thing if they're Republican, and they vote for who was endorsed. So that's a critical reason, because who's endorsed wins the primary usually and can go on to be the congressman. Okay. Secondly, the county, not the state, the county party leaders decide how the vote is counted. Okay. So the vote is all important, and we're counting it illegally and unverifiably in 99% of the country. We had a guest on a few weeks ago, Doug Bersall, who was a head of Richmond, New Hampshire, and he explained how they do it. They do it right in 5 counties in New Hampshire. That's the only place in the country where they count paper ballots before the ballots leave the public site, so nobody can switch ballots or cheat. And that's how we got to do it all over the country again, which was what we did before 1970, basically, when computers started coming in. But so secondly, not only endorsing the candidates that become the Congress, they pick how the vote is counted. Third, the county party leaders. We have 88 counties in Ohio. You have so many counties in your state. The county party leaders meet in Columbus, Ohio, and they elect the state party leader, who sets all the rules for the Senate and endorses the senators and that type of thing. Then the 50 state Republican Party leaders get together somewhere, maybe in St. Louis, in September of next year, and they elect the head of the party, which is now Romney's relative. I think her name is Coney. I don't want to say her name wrong, but she's a Romney relative. I keep forgetting who she is, but she's head of the party, and she's definitely a rhino. We need to put in somebody in there that is going to be a constitutionalist, So look at all the power. That's why we call the precinct committeeman position, a neighborhood precinct committeeman position, the most powerful office in the land. They decide how the votes counted in their county. They decide who will be endorsed, and 95% of the time, historically, the endorsed candidate wins at the primary and then can go on and be the congressman in the general election. They elect the state leaders, who set the rules for the state and endorse the senators and so forth. And then the state leaders, all coming from your little neighborhood precinct and all the other neighborhood precincts, the state leaders elects the head of the Republican Party nationally, who sets all the rules for the convention. Okay? So that is why we run, because this is the only way that we can peacefully take back the country. I always say, kind of being smart, like, if you want to pull out the guns like 1776, then that's the only other way to try to change power. Now, Dan Schultz and me and everybody, we've been working for 40 years, as most of you have, to peacefully do this. We want to peacefully do this. We're not urging anybody to pick up guns, because who would you shoot? I mean, and a civil war is a disaster for everyone. We're talking, as we have our whole lives, about peacefully taking back this country, okay, by the peacefully taking it back through the precinct strategy that I just explained to you. And if you said, gee, that was awful fast, I didn't get that, maybe I didn't say it the best way, if you go to networkamerica.org, then we have a 1-minute video up there that Dan Schultz put together that's excellent. And right under that is Dan's interview a few months ago with Steve Bannon, where he explains in detail how this works. And then from there, you can, or right away, you can go to his website, which is precinctstrategy.com, precinctstrategy.com. Also at networkamerica.org, which is is our website, is just to help people get together. You can join the Facebook side. Anybody can talk to anybody. We're not seeking members per se. We're seeking to connect all the literally thousands of leaders and activists that are upset and want to do something. And this is what to do, and it's the only thing to do to peacefully and constitutionally take back the country. It's not in competition, which is your favorite issue. It's the missing ingredient, so we can all get the important issues accomplished. It's the missing ingredient. Okay. So now I don't know. Is Chet Hand on the call?
Yes, he's here. I can see him.
All right. Well, let's
patiently sitting here. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Let me give Chet. Hi. Good. Let me give Chet just a little introduction here. As any of you have been guests know, and Dan Schultz has been a guest twice. We had Doug Burso. All of our shows are recorded, and they're put at networkamerica.org, and then you go to the menu tab that said archived video calls, okay? And so the chat is, so I don't pre-screen what he's going to say or anybody's going to say, but I can tell you already he's going to be a really great guest, and he has a very important message for the attitude that we all have to adopt to do this thing properly. Chet Hand is the head of the Republican Party in Boone County. Boone County is right across the river from me in Cincinnati, from where I live in Cincinnati. Congressman Thomas Massey, one of the very best congressmen, that county is involved in his district. It might be totally in his district, I don't know. So Chet Hand and his team became head of the Boone County Republican Party a few months ago, I think, and he has got a message for us. Chet, if you could kind of tell us how that happened, and then you were telling me a little bit about what attitude that we all have to take if we're gonna get involved and take this country back. Dan Schultz always says, and it's right. All we need is show up. That's all we need to start, and then you're going to start. You don't know what will happen. People are resigning around the country when they see this happen. But anyway, Chet Hand, you go ahead and you tell us how you did it, and whatever else you want to tell us. Okay. Hello?
Chet, somehow you're muted.
You might have to hit *6 to unmute.
How about now?
Yes.
There you go.
Sorry about
Yeah,
that.
you.
It
No
said
problem.
I was not muted there on the Zoom call, but I appreciate the introduction. Actually, we've only controlled the party for about a month now. So our reorganization was in mid-June.
Okay.
And actually we started tackling the Boone County as part of a 3-county strategy. We targeted both Boone, Campbell, and Kenton, the 3 Northern Kentucky counties up here, as part of an action group, a grassroots direct action group that we started up here back in March of this year. And it was kind of it initially started as a result of all the COVID restrictions and things going on, and how we can push back at a local level. And our strategy to do so involved taking over the Boone County, Kenton, and Campbell County Republican parties, because we got no support at a party level. And so the best way we thought to influence change in the future was to take over the party. I ended up in the chairman position simply because the guy that I wanted to do it wouldn't do it. So I ended up filling in for him in the slot. But we actually targeted all 3 counties expecting to lose. The rhinos in the areas up here are pretty entrenched, but we wanted to basically fight the good fight. It was the first time any of us had ever done it. And then we were going to move on to influencing the 2022 elections as best we could afterwards. But turns out when we did it, we actually took 2 of the counties. Technically, we probably took 3. We took all 3 of them, really, Kenton as well. But Kenton pulled some shenanigans procedurally, even though we outnumbered them 2-1 at the reorganization, both in precincts and voters. They pulled some procedural shenanigans and basically blocked our ability to get our people in. But we took Boone and Campbell. Boone, we took them probably closer to 4-1 in the votes and the precincts. Out of the 115 precinct positions that were filled, 90 of them were ours. And we did that. Every person that participated, for the most part, had never participated at the precinct level before. In fact, I'd say probably 99% of people that we contacted that were in the Republican Party didn't even know the precinct election and reorganization process existed. So it was new to everybody, but I feel like we were fairly well organized. We did a lot of planning for about 2 months in advance. We presented even though in Boone County, we don't vote as a slate, we vote individually. We presented a slate. We actually presented everybody as a flyer. We made a statement, a constitutional liberty focused statement on a flyer that we put together with the 5 officers that we were trying to elect, that we handed out in advance of the actual reorganization. And that was such an effective tactic that we had a number of other counties reach out to us afterwards for that flyer to use as an example when they went into their reorganizations. And it was so effective that when we went into Campbell County the following week, the opposition, quote unquote, had taken that same idea and put their slate together on a flyer, because it keeps all these first time people focused on who it is we're trying to elect and why. So we had good planning. We had a slate on a flyer. That simple handout made it very effective. We probably had about 500 people participate in the reorganization within our county, which is a record. We've never had that many participate before. But we did a lot of person-to-person outreach, calling people up. We didn't do a lot of advertising via social media or anything like that. We kept our communications and our recruitment very close to the chest, and only within our so-called trusted circles, our grassroots circles. And then we tried to plan for every outcome, anticipating, like I said, the Kenton County shenanigans, what had happened the week before. So we had check-in sheets at the door to be able to verify our counts versus the official accounts if they came out looking funny. But all in all, Boone County actually handled the election very, very well. We just outnumbered them. And that's when it comes to the reorganization, it really does come down to the numbers. If you have the most people per precinct, you win the precinct. And if you have the most precincts, you're going to win the officers. It's that simple when it comes to electing the folks in. But in regards to your comment on why we even did it in the first place, like we were talking about the other day, we've been part of this grassroots direct action grassroots movement here in Northern Kentucky for, probably 6-7 months now. And the difference is that there are a lot of conservative groups out there, but in our opinion, they tend to end up being a lot of people that show up that have been involved in politics or involved in the conservative movement for a while. They listen to themselves and others, pat each other on the back and tell each other how much they agree about certain things in an echo chamber, and nothing results in action. No action is taken as a result of these meetings. So our group formed as We the People Kentucky. Our group formed in order to start taking direct action. And we are looking for agility, lean groups. We are not looking for a large population, because if you go through any of the trainings and things such as the Foundation for Applied Conservative Leadership and stuff like that, it's very clear that a small group of people can have a very big influence. And so for us, we're looking for small groups of very engaged people. If we have somebody that shows up to meetings and they're not contributing funds to the cause, or they're not contributing time or energy, we kind of kick them to the side. We really want to free up that space for folks who are going to do work. And so basically, as part of that, tackling the precincts, we looked at that as a mental shift. So the grassroots groups tend to be more engaged, but the average voter, the average Republican or average or conservative voter, is not overly engaged, especially compared to the Democrats and the liberals. They tend to be kind of, one or two issue focused. It's either pro-life or it's Second Amendment. When those types of things, those major issues get threatened, then they get highly engaged up until the point that that's not an issue anymore. And then they go back to their normal lives, families, jobs, et cetera. So what we're looking at is, by taking over the precincts, by getting our people into the precincts and by getting our people into the party, it's not so much about controlling the party as much as it is a mental shift for the people. We want the party as a whole to have a little bit of a mental shift away from single issue, couple major issue focus, and get into a constant engagement. By coming to a Republican Party meeting once a month or once a quarter, whatever your frequency is, and voting on the critical issues of the party, that's more of a mental shift to constant engagement. It's not an every 4-year vote. It's not an every 2-year vote. You're constantly engaged in what's going on with the party. And our platform that we ran on for taking over the party was pretty clear, actually. It was, we're simply going to have communication. We're going to engage every Republican in our county. Because if 99% of people we talk to didn't even know this process exists, that's not a failure on the voter. That's a failure on the party. The party is not communicating the process and showing and educating the voter on how they can be engaged and have an influence. And it is influential. If you have somebody die in office in the county or resign, that the party is the ones that nominates a new person into office. That's pretty significant. If you have primaries coming up, the party are the ones that decide where funds go towards different campaigns, or who are we going to go pass signs out for. That can have a major impact on the upcoming election. So to me, and for the group of us that engaged in Boone County and Campbell County, it was more about a kind of this mental shift of getting the whole party engaged. So we are going to, if we do nothing over the next 4 years, but implement a robust communication process where all 63,000 Republicans in Boone County can be informed about what the party's doing, what their elected officials are doing within the Republican Party, and what the next steps are for our party and how they can have an influence on that, we will be a net positive in the end.
Jim, you're still muted. Sorry.
Chet, sorry about that. You mentioned to me when we talked the other day, the difference in attitude between the people that are on the other side, both the Democrats and the rhinos, and the difference in the attitude of our people of only getting excited about one issue. Could you address that a little bit more?
Yeah, I think that's pretty obvious. So the Democrats, if you look at what they do, there are thousands of different Democratic, and I say Democratic, let me rephrase that. There's thousands of different liberal organizations and groups around the country, and all of them have a very unique identity. And sometimes they're in opposition to each other, but somehow, as a liberal movement, all of these groups are marching in sync with each other towards a common objective, the destruction of our country, or however you want to characterize it. But they are marching in sync, and it is a constant pressure. It is nonstop, and it is relentless. We do not have that type of energy on the conservative side. And so the difference in attitude for us needs to be a shift away from that single issue engagement. I'm threatened. Now I'm going to attack whatever it is that's threatening me, to a constant state of attention to the local environment. I'll give you an example. In Northern Kentucky, the most conservative 3 counties in the entire state of Kentucky, there are 4 or 5 local cities here in Northern Kentucky that have passed so-called fairness ordinances within the city limits here recently. Nobody on any of the grassroots organizations we're involved with that live in these various cities had any idea these ordinances had even been passed. Why is that? It's because as conservatives, we're not engaged. We aren't on city councils. We aren't on school boards. We are not going to city council meetings. And that's because we got families and farms and jobs and careers and things like that we're engaged in. And that's just that's a difference in political mentality between the conservatives and the liberals. So if we had been engaged, there's no question we control 78% of the voting population in Northern Kentucky. There's no chance that anything like that would have been passed if we had been engaged, but we weren't.
Okay, now the other thing you mentioned was the reality of now that you're running the county, but you kind of got to do so prudently because of the rules that are in place at the state level and so forth that that you have to take cognizance of. Could you explain to everybody a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that's just being strategic. So, we actually, and I mean, we were planning to win, but we anticipated losing when we targeted the county. We just didn't plan on winning the way we did, which is good. That's great. We've won and now we control the party. But at the same time, the state party and the district parties are definitely not on the conservative side. They're definitely Republicans, but they're not necessarily on the conservative side. There are rules in place in Kentucky within the Republican Party that, given certain allegations of malfeasance, party officers at a county and district level can be removed from their positions by the state or district officers. So there's value, in my opinion, in simply being in place within the party, even if we don't do anything, which is not likely. We're going to do a lot to move the party forward. But even if we didn't, there's value in simply keeping somebody else from being in that position, taking the party the wrong direction. And so I think rather than being very, in the trenches, like some of the grassroots organizations can be, very guerrilla warfare-ish, we just need to be a little bit more strategic about how we target our objectives going forward. As an example, in at least for the state of Kentucky in our RPK rules, you can't specifically go out and target or speak out against a Republican elected official. That would be malfeasance according to the rules of the party. But we can be very open and clear to all Republican voters in our county about how that person votes. And when it comes to the primaries, as long as we're fair across all parties, every person on the ballot in the primary, we can be very clear with questions or interviews or scheduling debates, and we can have questions in there that target the conservative concerns and put them on the spot to make sure that the rhinos that are in office have an opportunity to explain themselves.
Okay. Did anyone have any questions or comments for Chet?
I'll throw something in here.
Go ahead.
I'm from Wisconsin. Dan, we're the only state in the union that has no committeeman. And so we're getting that established. And Dan, I've been working with Dan. Dan gave me a good clue to look at a 1970 blue book. And I found out where we used to have committeemen. And I'm finding it pretty easy to get people to be committeemen. The trick is going to be to get the people that are in charge right now to actually nominate them, because they seem to be for it, so they seem to be going for it. It's just giving them a little chance to think about it and then get in with it. But here's the thing that I want to do. This is a couple of steps down the road. First of all, there's 44 committeemen in our county, and there's only maybe a half a dozen people actually active in the party, and they only represent a couple little pockets in the county. So if I get those 44 people out there and they're MAGA people, I think we're going to have some fun. And the question is, what kind of fun should we have? I was at a kind of a party last night, a lot of political people there, pundits there. And I thought maybe do some podcasts, go door to door, hand out some stuff, do some demonstrations. But we got to do something around here to liven up the party. It's a very reserved bunch. They don't do much, don't hear much about them. And that's my question. Is anybody doing anything that's kind of fun and you get out there and just raise some hell and make some noise and say, hey, we're here. Here's the Republicans.
Well, let me comment on that for a second. It's Jim in Cincinnati. Some people have gotten to the end of one of these calls and they've said, well, what was the purpose of this call? So the purpose, I would say, is two things. One, find out what precinct you live in by contacting your Board of Elections website or phone call. So I live in Green Township, Y, Hamilton County, Ohio. You live in a precinct. Find that out. The second thing we would like is not for there just to be one national call, which we got people from all over the country on these calls, but never more than 40 in one call so far. And that's not going to get it done in time. But we would like to see a county call in all 3,141 counties, because the idea of this call is you get involved, you meet people in your area, then you eventually meet in person, and then you eventually try to elect somebody who's a strong constitutionalist ahead of your county party. That's the purpose of the call. So we'd rather like to have 3,141 of these calls going on each week in each county, people meeting in person, and then doing what Chet Hand and his crew did in Boone County and the other counties there. That's the goal of the call. So we could, again, take back the country. Now, as far as doing everything you do should be related to that, either supporting a good county chairman, which is unlikely that you have one right now. Anybody does, unless it's someone like we've had on the call, like Chet, and or electing one that's going to be a constitutionalist. I don't know. As far as fun goes, I don't tend to, I mean, anything you can do to make, maybe have a meeting at a dinner or something, but I haven't thought about that question, Dan Schultz or Chet. Anybody got any ideas on that? I've never thought about but yeah, the more fun you're having, the better, more people you're going to attract. Does anybody got any thoughts on that?
I can throw out one comment. Oh,
no, go ahead, Chet. Then Dan will comment after you. Go ahead, Chet.
One of the things that I forgot to mention that we specifically did, it's common in Kentucky for the counties to implement an executive committee with a minimum of 9 people in our county. So that has been the way things have been done around here for a long time. The last executive committee, I think, had like 13 people on it. And when there's 189 elected precinct positions in our county, we chose to not implement an executive committee. And we were told at the time that you'll never get people in the county to be engaged. You'll never have enough people to even establish a quorum for a meeting. Out of the 115 positions that we had filled in the reorganization, we had 86 show up at our last meeting. And that right there is how the local, Republican Party across all precincts are getting engaged. Because I heard the word, having fun, et cetera, but I think you could translate that also to engagement. How is the average voter, how's the average Republican being engaged in their party to feel like they have a voice in the party? This is how you capture all those third party people, the ones that say, I'm done with the Republican Party, I'm going third party option because my voice doesn't mean anything in the party and nothing I say or do is going to have an influence. At the precinct level, to get rid of your executive committees, you fill out all county committee positions at the precinct level, and then give them the opportunity to have a voice at your meetings where they can bring up their concerns and feel like the party's addressing them. That's how we get stuff done at a local level.
But just a quick clarification. When I say having fun, I'm not talking go out and playing ball or something like that. When I watch those Trump rallies, what I see people there are having fun, and to go out and do something neat that's politically oriented, You know, not like the Republicans are doing now. And some of the, I'm with the Libertarian Party. What they're doing now, they go out and have some beers or something like that, and they consider that a meeting. No, I'm talking about getting things done politically, but make it fun.
You know, for probably 30 years or so, we've had a Christmas party in our county. It's a fundraising party, you know, to raise money for the county party, but it's $1,000 a table. So what ends up happening is you get your local elected politicians, a couple of the big wigs that are powering the money in the local area, and that's it, that show up. On our first meeting, one of the first suggestions that somebody had was, why don't we do a county picnic where the average Joe and his family can show up and talk to their local elected representatives? We could have 1,000 people there at $10 a head at a local county picnic, and they could ask questions of their elected officials. I would put that in the same boat as that as the Trump rallies, right? Now you got a large percentage of the population showing up, and they can actually engage their elected officials.
That's a good idea. Dan, before you comment, I guess the only way to do that for sure is to get Trump to your rally. The problem is not everybody's an entertaining character like Trump or Jim Trafficant was. But what Chet said there is a good idea. But see, Chet's trying to help people get engaged. A lot of the old kind of rhino-oriented party leaders don't want people engaged. Dan Schultz, what are your thoughts?
Well, there's first off, what I would do, George, is go to my site, go to the blog, go to the second article, scroll down, and you'll find a postcard strategy document that you can download. Maybe you've done that already. And what I did in my precinct, and I'm trying to get it done in every other precinct in my legislative district, I gave the idea to the county committee. They didn't do anything with it. I gave it to our state chairman. She didn't do anything with it. But essentially what you do is this: you send out a postcard to the perfect voters. So that's only going to be about maybe 35, 40%. The ones you can set the criteria. You do it with GOP Data Center. You print out the list of the people who vote 100% of the time. And then you send them a postcard and you introduce yourself and you say, hey, I live in your precinct. I'm a Republican. First, I want to congratulate you and thank you for being a perfect voter. You're really clued into the issues. You're like a perfect Republican, right? And then ask them if they'd respond to the postcard, because what you would like to do is you'd like to do what like Chet suggested, which I think is a fantastic suggestion. And that is we want to invite you to first our monthly meetings, but better yet, we're going to have like a barbecue or a picnic somewhere in the county where you can, and we're going to invite the candidates so you can meet them and then see what kind of a response you get. I think you said what you had, how many precincts do you have in your county, George? I don't think you mentioned that.
We have 44. And by the way, Wisconsin set up a little differently. The word precinct is not mentioned anywhere in the law. They're wards. And the wards.
Yeah, you have wards, right?
Yeah, the wards, each village, town, and city is a ward. So it's very easy to find them. If you're in a city, they'll be broken into aldermanic districts. So each one of those districts is a ward. And in the large villages, that gets a little more complicated. They'll have 4 or 5 wards. But otherwise, every town, city, and village is a ward. There's no other, that's their designations.
Okay.
Can I
so
ask?
then what I would recommend you do is. Hello?
Finish, Dan, then the lady's going to, I don't know who, go ahead, Dan, finish your thought, then we'll let the lady.
Okay. All right. So, what I'd recommend you do is try this out, see what kind of a response you get. And then if you get a response, move forward with an event. That's what I recommend you do. And then use the event and use the postcard strategy also to recruit those people. Hopefully you'll be able to with, I think you've talked to George, I'm Greg over in La Crosse County by now. I think you guys need to try to re-implement the actual thing the statute says you can have, and that is you can have elected ward captains or whatever they're called in Wisconsin. I don't remember the terminology.
You
But
can
move
elect
to
precinct.
that model.
Yeah, if, each committeeman, if he wants to, let's say he's got a relatively large district, he can elect captain of the precincts, and those would be the 2 wards within the district. So that's all provided by
Yeah.
law. But we can
Right.
do that stuff. But
Right. So that's what I would recommend you do, is see if you can canvas the each precinct with a postcard, this postcard method, and then see what kind of a response you get. You could do it, you could flyer all the houses, but that takes a lot of time and effort. A simple postcard I've done it in my precinct and it works. I got responses back. Those people who responded back, I recruited them, and then they in turn recruited others that they knew, and I filled my precinct back up to 100% strength. So
last night I was talking to a couple of gals about a flyer, a neat flyer to pass out. Not one that's just pushing a candidate, but pushing an issue, and that's fun too. When I've gone door to door passing out flyers like that for various reasons, that could be fun.
Yeah,
I just looking for some
absolutely.
ideas, and it's like when I get those 44 or close to the 44 precinct captains, not district committeemen. That's what they're actually called here. When I get them appointed, then we're going to start doing some things, podcasts, whatever it is. Because we got to liven this place up. We got to be MAGA. We can't
Right.
these dreary reserved Republicans.
Right.
All over the place.
So, Drew, now wait, Q, who was the lady that tried to chime in?
Maria was in line, but I don't see her hand being up. And
Well, Maria,
Chad
why don't you-
also
Yes.
left the meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, there she is.
Yeah, it was me. I was trying to ask Chat a question, but he left.
Yeah, he
Okay.
left.
I wanted to ask
Chat left?
him how he was
Yeah, Chad left.
communicating. Yeah, I wanted to ask him how he was going to be communicating with the Republicans, that what strategy they were using, in like email or whatever. But to the gentleman that's talking about fun, what we've done in our area is we had a couple of precinct called chairs here. We got a couple of speakers on different topics of interest, and we had a voter meeting. We've had our second one now, and we've gotten a great turnout. Different people have come different times. We had just our local state rep and a state senator come out the first time and answer questions, and we just had coffee and cookies and whatever. And it was very lively, and we had about 70 people. And then this month we were lucky that we live in North Carolina in a county that our Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson is from.
Mhm.
And we had a connection to him. So he came out to speak, and we pushed that. And we also had a convention of state speaker, and we got about 175 people to that. And it was a lot of fun. And we had some ladies bring food. So I would just say, if you can find an interesting speaker and just spread the word around. We have another group in our county that is not officially affiliated with the Republican Party. They just call themselves Guilford Patriots, and they meet at a restaurant that has room for about 100 people, like in a party room, and they'll meet there and they'll have different speakers. They don't even announce them. They don't send out flyers. They do word of mouth and text, and they get about 100 people coming because people are interested, I think, in trying to figure out what's going on. Anyway, I would see if you could find some people to put together some type of meeting and get a couple of good speakers or candidates. And we have candidates coming and begging us to talk, and we couldn't get them in. So yeah. So anyway, good luck to you.
Sounds good. I'm just looking for ideas right now. We'll be putting them into action as I build up our committeeman structure.
Okay.
Yes, Dan Schultz wants to speak.
Yeah, there's a couple of other things I wanted to say about things that might be fun to do. So here's what you could do. When you do have your event, like your picnic, let's say, do a Ronald Reagan impersonation contest. Ask everybody who comes if they want to try to do their best Donald Trump impersonation, have a contest and vote on it and give them a door prize. That would be fun. And I think it would be a lot of fun. And then the other thing I would caution you though about these days is nowadays, like this happened just about a month ago in Greenville County, South Carolina, at some event that Michael Flynn spoke at. I can't remember the name of the thing, but a guy comes up and grabs the microphone when it was open mic time and says, "I want to make a toast to Michael Flynn," and then called him the biggest scumbag traitor that ever existed in the history of the United States. And they had to wrestle him to the ground and take him out. And now he's suing them for defamation and assault. And so you got to have good security. You got to really plan these days, because if you let anybody and everybody show up, BLM or Antifa will show up, and you've got to be prepared for that. So I'd recommend you tell everybody, bring a baseball bat. And make sure everybody's got a baseball bat. I'm serious about this. Make sure you've got people who are armed. I'm lucky enough to live in Arizona, and I know Wisconsin has open carry. I'd recommend you have everybody open carry at your event, if it's like in a park or whatever, assuming you can do that in the park. Check the laws. I think you can, but just be prepared is what I'm saying. Even, in which county are you in, George?
Racine County.
Racine. So Racine County,
That's
kind of urban, isn't it?
No, well, no. Racine is one of the 5 biggest cities in the state. Those 5 mayors got together and brought in Zuckerberg to screw up our election system. Yeah, Racine was the
right
hub for that. So it's
the other thing I wanted to say was this: use the push for audits as something to attract. Okay,
right.
Say you're going to have a meeting where people can come and discuss getting the Wisconsin state legislature to do an audit in Wisconsin.
Yeah, I think that's
from what I understand. There's 175,000 people on Telegram right now talking about audits. Yeah. And what I'm trying to do is steer all 175,000 of them into becoming precinct committeemen and explaining to them your quest for audits would become you'd be much more politically powerful in lobbying the state legislatures if you fill up all the vacant precinct committeeman slots in your party and then say to the state legislatures, laters, I became a precinct committeeman. I'm a conservative. I'm an America Firster, and I'm recruiting every other America Firster who wants an audit to follow my lead. I don't know if you saw it when Trump was here at the rally yesterday. There's a state's senator, Michelle Ugenti Rita. I know her. She's not the sharpest knife in the drawer. She stymied a whole bunch of legislation, election reform legislation. Everybody in the hall knew it because we told them, because it's a big issue here in Arizona. They didn't do any meaningful election reform this session. They adjourned without accomplishing anything. And she was part of the reason she got booed off the stage. I mean, literally booed off the stage. I saw the clip. She went out there, tried to speak. The entire audience booed her. They wouldn't let her speak. She gave up and walked off the stage. And she's running for Secretary of State. She'll never get elected Secretary of State now. She's toast. And I know the legislative district that she's from. It's LD23. It's just to the north of me. And they're never going to re-elect her for anything or elect her otherwise. So. And Mark Fincham is also running for Secretary of State, and he probably has the best shot. But in my opinion, all of those state legislators need to be never voted for again when they run. It's because they failed us in the 5 states, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Arizona. Republican majorities. They could have stopped this. They could have used their plenary power, and they didn't do it. And the good ones were too timid to call out the bad ones. So I think they all need to get primaried. Thanks.
On the election thing, while you're talking to people that want to audit, which is all that can be done about the last election now, try to educate everybody that what we want, we don't want to be in a position where we have to audit next time. We want the ballots counted, paper ballots counted at the precinct by people before the ballots leave the public site. People always say paper ballots. We have paper ballots in 80% of the country and always have. Should have it in 100%, of course. The others are just bleeps of energy. But you not only need paper ballots. Right now, we have paper ballots in Ohio, and you put them in a little ATM type machine right after you vote, and you can't ever get on them again as a general rule. If you do, it's 2 years later. It's a terrible, it's a illegal, unconstitutional system. So you need the paper ballots counted at the precinct by people before the ballots leave the public site. We don't need computers. If they want to run them through the computers after the hand count, fine, but we don't need them. And it should be on camera. I mean, if you look at open letter to DonaldTrump.com, emergency memo, there's 9 pages there that will tell you and everyone else exactly how our system is working now and how it should be working, which is like they do in New Hampshire. So it's very important. You know, people will say, well, we got paper ballots in case we need a recount. How about the count? Forget the recount. How about the count? So this seems to be very hard for our people to get in their head because they think, well, we're always going to have computers. No, we can't. If we always have these secret computer counts, I mean, Dan, you said they're never going to get elected again. I hope so, but that assumes they're not going to rig the computer silently, which they can easily do. The people that run these computer companies, I'm not talking about hackers. I'm talking about the people that run the companies. They own the software. So it's very important we get these ballots counted right, and we use cameras like they do in casinos. When we're doing elections or when we're doing banks, we assume everybody's going to be a crook in a bank. You know, they got cameras on them. Same with votes. We assume everybody, including me, might be a crook. And that's why you film everything and you have checks and balances as they do in New Hampshire, the three teams to count 50 ballots each, 3 people to a team. And if it's on camera, no one, even if it was a totally Democratic precinct, voting precinct, they couldn't cheat. Okay, does anybody else, new people, if you want to make a comment, feel free to do so. No questions saying, maybe I'll say something dumb. You can't say something dumb. We're just trying to help people understand what's going on here. Does anybody new or anybody else have anything else to say?
I saw a couple of new people, but I guess they're not here right now. So
maybe we should, when new people come on, we should maybe
ask them.
Tell them to hold on and get them on, because we can always comment. Those of us who are older can always comment. After.
Mom of nine, Wisconsin, hand is up.
Okay.
It was up.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to say that we're making progress here.
In Wisconsin.
Yes, I had to sit down with my county chair and I explained this whole thing to her. I'm supposed to meet with her Thursday, and George here helped me out a lot. Gave me a certificate with that citation of the statute. I'm gonna have her sign them like as I get people. So, and I'm being considered for another position right now in the party. So I'm gonna have a lot more area to cover, but I also will be able to, organize people a lot better just than, what I'm doing right now. So George has been a huge help, just saying that we're making a lot of progress here. So.
Well, Mom, it's going to get me a lot of contacts up there in the northeast section of Wisconsin.
I talked to Mom of 9, and she is making a lot of progress. She's on the track of getting a lot of contacts. I'm glad you and George have hooked up there. And so, I wanted to comment on something earlier that Chet Hand had said about Boone County. He said they had 189 precincts. They got 115 filled with their active people, and they had 80 at their meeting. That's fantastic. So in Ohio and Hamilton County, we are in Cincinnati, big city. We have 1,100 precincts, and we've identified 300 to run in those 1,100. Now, on networkamerica.org, Nikki Nelson, my associate and webmaster, we're working on getting that divided down into precincts. And that ideally would be done for every county somewhere. So people would go in, and we're not going to put the name of the person who's in that precinct. We're just going to say it's filled. And then but people need to know, how many precincts do we still need to fill? People like to see progress. They like to feel that their little effort is adding up with everybody else's effort. And Mom of Nine and Mr. Meyer, it seems like they're on the track to getting that spirit going in Wisconsin. We got to do that in every state and in every county. Okay. Did anybody else?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that Brian in Missouri actually is new, and one more person that I don't see
Missouri,
that
you
person.
mean?
Missouri, yes.
We hope he's not.
Brian, do you have any? Because he says basically he moved to a new county and he has to wait until he could run for a PC position over there. But there was another person, so we had a couple of people who are new in this call.
Okay, well, if anybody wants to say anything or just say hi, then you're welcome to do so.
Ryan, do you want to say anything? Introducing yourself.
Okay. Somehow the voice.
Okay, Brian.
Somehow the voice is distorting, or he's playing a joke on us. One of the two. It sounds like Donald.
Brian, thank you so much. It was, but I was serious. If you wanted to come and say something, but anyway, there was one more person, but it would be a great idea because Dan actually, when he got into the room, he says like, do we have to do the introduction every week? I guess if there is no new person, not really. But if there is a new person or there are a couple of people who are new, yes, that maybe we can do that.
I mean, this is the only call we have, and there is new people on every week so far, even if it's just a few. And then if someone comes in and listens to the archives at the tab that says conference call video archives or whatever it says on Network America, then if they just listen to one thing because their friend told them to come in, they hear why we're running and how it works, basically. And then thankfully we can refer them at the end of that, which usually is a 15 to 20 minute introduction, to Dan Schultz's interview with Steve Bannon in case they need to review it. And of course, I forgot to mention that there's also the most powerful office in the land is on networkamerica.org under the More tab. And there's other things at precinctstrategy.com. You can review things if it seems like a lot at first, which it kind of is. Then it's a new concept anyway. It's out of most of our comfort zones. There's plenty of places to review more information.
Yes, I just wanted to say that Brian says I need to test my mic.
Okay.
I don't know.
Right. How's this?
Yes,
hey, that's good. Now,
now
you're good.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem.
I was a precinct committeeman at Maricopa County in the 2008 election. So I would, go door to door and I also worked the elections. And since I moved to Missouri, I've worked the elections in the Jackson County area. It's a suburb of Kansas City. And not as a precinct committeeman, but just as an election official. I would do the electronic check people in when they come in to vote, check their registration and make sure that they're on the rolls to vote. So, and election judge is what it was called. So, but I moved to a new county, and I'm told I have to wait a year before I can run for a county office or a precinct committeeman office.
What? That seems restrictive of people's ability to participate, but okay.
I've only been here about 3 months, so I'm still getting my feet wet in the new city, and I'll start going to meetings and start meeting some people and see how they're doing things here in Henry County.
Good. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for commenting.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah. So that is, the whole thing is we got to
Yes.
just get everybody
Dan
participate.
Schultz wants to comment on that.
Go ahead, Dan.
Florida just passed, the Florida legislature just passed a law, it was enacted into law, that in order to become an elected precinct committeeman or appointed precinct committeeman in Florida, from here on out, you have to have been a registered Republican for at least a year. So I found this out from several people who contacted me through my site and said, "Hey, Dan, they told me I was a Republican, and then I got mad at the Republican Party and I switched to NPA, no party affiliation. And then I decided, I saw you on War Room, so now I want to become a PC. And now they're telling me, sorry, you got to wait a year." And, I told them, yeah, I'm sorry too. Why did you switch? But so that happened in Florida. I don't know if why that happened, other than I think it's maybe because of they want to have like a little bit more assurance that somebody who wants to become a PC isn't some Democrat in disguise who just, I just changed my registration from Democrat to Republican, but they're really trying to just infiltrate the party. So my guess is that was the main motivation for it.
Yeah, that doesn't seem unreasonable that people show
No,
that
I don't think so either.
involved for a thing. But the other thing, I don't know, what Brian said in Missouri seemed a little bit, maybe it was the same thing. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, I can see them doing a little bit of a test. They're probably more worried about a bunch of people that got disgusted in their constitutionalists coming back than they are the Democrats infiltrating. But it's not an unreasonable thing, I don't think, to have some proof that you want to be in the party, that you're claiming to be in. Okay.
Well, we don't have anybody raise his hand or her hand.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, in the future, when somebody new raises their hand, you could break in as soon as possible, or chat them and acknowledge them and say, hold on, we're going to get right to you. And then we'll let them comment, because those of us who are on most of the weeks, we can always come and comment on what they say, but I hate for them to feel like we're not going to, I guess they feel they got to go, or they feel we're not going to get to them for a long time. So let's try to acknowledge them and then and tell them to hold there while we get to them.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I saw a couple of them.
Sure.
One of them was Brian, and I think for maybe a few minutes I couldn't locate him. But anyway,
okay.
Definitely. I mean, that we will give him time to come and introduce themselves.
Okay. All righty.
All right.
If we don't have anything else, then I guess we'll close down. A lot of times we go till 10, but we don't want to just be on the call to be on the call. It's 9:10. Anyone that can look back at some of the archives of any of the other meetings, and often the comments after the guest are really, really good. And as I think tonight they've been good. I have various things that have come up. It seems like a lot of people are getting sick these days, some from after taking the vaccine. So I got a few problems like that to handle. But so if we don't have anything else, we'll be here next week. And please.
Sorry, Susan is asking.
Oh, okay. It's Susan.
In the chat room, that is there any way to find out how the election system is decided in Texas? I have asked, but keep getting different answers from the party.
Well, I mean, in Texas, basically, you got the same problem we do in Ohio. You vote, they take the votes away from you. And there's 3 companies, ES&S, Election System and Software. They do 60, each county hires one of these companies. They do 60% of the counties. Dominion, who became famous and had bought Diebold in 2013, they do 20%, and then Sequoia, not Sequoia, they bought Sequoia and Diebold. Hart, which we use in Cincinnati, they do about 20% of the county. And they got secret computer programs. The Board of Elections signs a contract. They will not look at the software. They won't sue them. They'll go to arbitration. I've never heard of an arbitration. But so you need in Texas, like we do everywhere else except part of New Hampshire, beat the drum of paper ballots counted by people at the precinct before they leave the public site. And I would say, I would like to see all these computer companies kicked out, both the big three, and there's a few little ones that do another 4% of the counties, I think. So you're in the same boat, Susan, as the rest of us. By the way, if anybody wants to copy the chat, there's probably several ways to do it, but I click in it, I hit Control All, I'm on a PPC, Control C, which copies all the comments, and then I post it into a Word document. Tonight's would say chat 7/25/21. So you can't, there's probably another way to copy the chat, but that's the way I do it every week.
And also, I love Dan's answers almost every time, and it's very logical. Ask the Republican who is running for the office, and if they don't know, tell them they should not be running. Really, that's a very, very logical question and also answer. I love that. Yes.
Jim, I'm just going to comment on the ballots real quick. I wasn't going to bring up another issue, but I have the four pillars to good voting, to honest voting. It's in person, on paper, hand count, 1 day.
That's absolutely true. But remember, it's got to be hand counted before it leaves the public.
I'm almost tempted to add a fifth, but I don't want to get complicated. I like the whole thing about on camera.
Yeah. No, it's just people got to understand that that's what we got to try to do. But I like that. And you're right. And my sister always says a breathing person comes in with an ID so you can know who's voting. What's on the cable, Meet the Press, and they weren't on today, but Meet the Press and George Stephanopoulos Sunday shows were often the bad part of the ruling elite communicates what they want us all to think. They are constantly acting like producing an ID is the same as outlawing minorities to be able to vote, which is a big insult to minorities. But it's unbelievable the amount of treasonous disinformation they're pushing as if they got a righteous cause. And we got to educate our people of how it should be done. Because once it's done that way, I believe MSNBC and CNN would become virtually irrelevant because there'd be nobody at the computer companies to help their phony polls, and I think a lot of their phony analysis come true, and they would become irrelevant.
As would the socialists. They are not getting legitimate votes.
I don't think so either. And of course, at least those behind the socialists are the same people running MSNBC and CNN.
That's right. That's that whole bunch.
No, that's a good comment. I appreciate you. I appreciate you making those comments.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't see any more questions either on the chat box or I don't see people raising their hands.
Okay. Well, I think we've had a good call, and let's convene next week. Tell your friends and as best you can to show up. We are not having any complaints that it's a bad time for the call. So
yes, Dan raised his hand. Yes.
Okay.
Just the last minute. Yes.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Dan.
I wanted to make everybody aware that this happened on Tuesday night in Clark County, Nevada. They had to have a special meeting for some reason to elect a new chairman. It was a regular meeting. They had their what's called their convention meeting back in November. For whatever reason, they were going to elect a new chairman. I don't know if the chairman was deciding to quit or what. And it's I don't have all the facts, but I watched the video of it, and it literally looked like on the YouTube video that I saw before the meeting, that one poster I have where I show a line out the door at like Acme County Committee meeting, and it's out the door, and it's conservatives trying to get in and participate in the meeting, and that's what we need. Well, this video showed before the meeting, that's what it looked like. There was a line out the door of new people wanting to come in and participate in this. They have a rule, though, that if you're an appointed PC, you can't participate in any votes until you and be appointed until you've attended 2 meetings. And they haven't been having meetings since last November, because that was a convention. Then they were going to have another one, but then they canceled it because of COVID restrictions. This is Clark County, Nevada, Las Vegas. And so they canceled and canceled and canceled. So this was going to be their first regularly scheduled meeting. And there were people who had been appointed, but they weren't going to allow them to participate in the election because it was the first meeting, not the second. So they hold the meeting, and there was a guy who wanted to run, and they disqualified him improperly, apparently. And the person that they was sort of like handpicked to be the successor chairman, the existing chairman realized, oh my God, the turnout is so great, she's probably not going to get elected. So what did they do? They did what they normally do, the rhinos. They had 2 speakers talk for like an hour. And then there were objections and points of order and blah, 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 blah. And they took the vote. And then finally they ran out of time. And then they said, we're not adjourning the meeting, which would have been proper. And then noticing a new meeting, because at that new meeting, more people would be able to participate. No. They said, we are recessing this meeting and we are going to reconvene it in the future. Well, there was such an uproar over the next few days. Yesterday, the existing chairman, who's a real jerk. I mean, he was calling people names. Everybody hates this guy. And the weird thing is, he used to be a pretty well-respected guy, but not anymore. Anyways, he has now resigned, and apparently all of the officers, the existing officers, every single one of them, their terms expired according to the bylaws, because a term is 2 years, and the rest of them were in beyond 2 years. So it's really, really up in the air what's happening in Clark County, Nevada. How are they going to have a meeting? I guess the state committee is going to have to conduct a meeting, because these officers don't exist anymore. It's like there's a whole big committee, but nobody's in charge because all the officers have vanished, evaporated. So I just wanted to make everybody aware of that why did this all happen? Again, it's like I said on Bannon's program the last time I was on, when conservatives gather where and how it really matters, good things happen. And usually the rhinos quit. And that's what happened again.
Yeah.
Since that Tuesday night meeting. The rhino chairman quit because he couldn't get along with the new people.
I want to make an addendum to that, and an addendum to my earlier comments when I said, as long as they don't switch the vote in the computer on the race you were talking about. Now, the Collier brothers, who were both died unfortunately in the 90s, and they wrote the book Vote Scam: The Stealing of America, which was published in 1992. Jim Collier, who I was closer to, always said that once the computer's in, they can do anything they want as long as it's believable. So again, the main problem we have is people not showing up, people not being involved. When this lady ran into such negativity and was booed and couldn't speak, kind of hard to make it believable that she's going to get elected. So the number one problem, some people are saying, well, is this going to work? Until we get several 100,000 people, there's about 250,000 precincts. Maybe there's 4. Some places have 2 people per precinct, so there may be 400,000 positions, I think we've said. But the main problem we still have is everybody does not realize that by putting in 20 or 40, let's say 40 hours every year, every 2 years, this is the cost to keep our country free and faithful to the Constitution. And again, my experience has been, when we show up, they make mistakes, even if it's not an overwhelming show of force. But we should all go to that county meeting every 2 or 4 years and be there. You have a right to be there, even if you're not elected. We should have thousands and thousands of people in every county, because when we show up, they make mistakes. And then the more that show up, they can't make it that Joe Unpopular got elected if he's obviously unpopular with a lot of people. But if everybody's sitting at home watching TV and hoping for somebody else to do something for us, that is the formula for losing the country. So anyway, that's my little addendum there.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, I've got a few things to take care of. Anybody can stay and talk if Q wants to stay, but I guess we'll shut down the meeting formally. Thanks everybody for coming, and we'll be here next week. Try to by email and phone call tell your contacts if they haven't been on and they're